lived with his master throughout his life. And there are stories I'm going to tell when I talk about Swami Vivekananda in a minute. I'll tell you how this Vivekananda relates to Latu. Here is this prakhara, intellectual, and here is this rustic. And you see how they interact with each other. I'm going to talk to you in the later stage of this particular story. But let me talk about Latu a little bit more. You see, he was a very unique character, out of this world. He could not conform to any regulation. Once the master said, "How can you go to sleep at night? You should be meditating." That was enough for him. From that day on, he would meditate all night. And later on, even when they started the first, the monastery, and all the brother disciples, in the middle of the night, they'll just, put the oil lamp out and go to sleep. Everybody go to sleep, 9 p.m., switch off the, snuff out the oil lamps. And then they could hear click, click, click in the middle of the night. They were living in very poor condition. They thought some rats or mice are now beginning to play. It happened every night. So one of the brother decided there's some mischief is going on here. So next day, I'm not going to sleep, I'm going to wait. As soon as that click, click start in the middle of night, he struck a match. And he saw Latu quietly sitting up, doing his meditation, beads, turning his beads. That's why the click, click was coming from. He said, "Latu, do you want to surpass all of us? When we sleep, you want to continue meditating? This is not you stay with us, don't go ahead of us." And this is the kind of fun and games. Also, you see, when I tell you some of the stories of Latu, it will touch you. Let me tell you why. When Ramakrishna passed away, he served him to the last day. Now, Latu is not going to conform. He is going to lead a life on his own. He can't even stay in the monastery because he can't conform to anything. So how does he spend his life? When you listen to this is the life of a real, if you like, a realized personality. Latu would sit on the bank of the river Ganga and meditate, spend his days and nights meditating. How would he feed himself? What were his material possessions? Look, if this doesn't bring tears to your eyes, nothing else will. He had one towel, and once in a while somebody would give him a little bit of 1 or 2 paisa with which he would buy chickpeas, dry chickpeas. He would put those chickpeas in the towel, go to the bank of the Ganga, find a rock, and put this towel with the chickpeas under the rock and hold it down. And the river would flow over it, and Latu would sit on the bank of the river and go into deep meditation. When the meditation was over, and hopefully the tide is gone, he would go looking for his towel, pull it out, the chickpeas will become wet and they can be eaten. He would eat it happily. Now you see, we may think, this is poor Latu. Look, we are the poor ones. This guy was in full flow. Chickpeas, what chickpeas? He was eating nectar. For him there was no difference. Establishing God realization, these things are very trivial. He had no difficulty with any of that. He wasn't suffering. We suffering, oh dear. He was in full flow. We never know what he was tasting. Not chickpeas, much more sweeter. And some of the funny story about Latu that makes us smile and laugh and do whatever we like. At night, when sometimes there was rainy season, where can you find shelter, this Latu? Now in those days there will be kind of lot of compartments, cargo compartments of railway carriages would be in the sidings somewhere. So you'll find some railway carriage for transporting cargo with open door. He would say, okay, there's some straw there, I can sleep in there. So he would quietly go into the railway carriage with cargo things and just lie there and go to sleep. And then this Latu told he said, one day I was sleeping and suddenly I got up with a jolt. They'd actually linked up that particular carriage and taken it to another village 50 miles away. He got up in another town. Now he doesn't have money. You see, he has no money. Toil is his material wealth. So he said, now how do I get back? The only way I can get back is walk back 50 miles. He said, from that day onward, I decided not to sleep in railway carriage. Too risky. Don't know where you wake up. You see, when you look at the story of this Latu, you see a transformation to the highest level of an ordinary person turning into a great sage. Later in his life, in the final days in his life, he spent his time in Kashi, Banaras. Here, a lot of people would flock to him and ask him very subtle questions, spiritual questions about spirituality. I told you, remember what Sri Ramakrishna had said? pure Vedas will flow out of his mouth. When he opens his mouth, purest of Vedas will flow out. This is what used to happen. Just let me give you one example of the depth of this personality. Somebody said, Maharaj, this life is very burdensome. Look, we all feel it. We may not acknowledge it, but we all feel it. Life is burdensome. So many things, unresolved issues coming up, cropping up all the time. It's very burdensome. How can we make it light? And look at the answer from this rustic. He said, my boy, suppose you dive in the river Ganga. Yeah? You dive deep in the river Ganga. Do you feel the weight of the water? You see, when you are, Archimedes knows, you don't feel any weight. In fact, you have to force yourself to go down. You're not feeling the weight of the water. In fact, you're being pushed up. You have to be kind of push yourself down to stay in the water. There's no weight. You don't feel the weight. In fact, you become weightless. So he's using this example. He said, when you dive in the Ganga, do you feel the weight of the water of the Ganga on top of your head? In the same way, when you are floating in the ocean of Satchidanand, the idea of this idea that I am the spirit, what weight? The world appears a mansion of mirth, merriment. Everywhere I look, there is nothing but excitement, spiritual excitement. I live in bliss. What burden, my boy, what burden? When you recognize that you are swimming in the ocean of Satchidanand, your essential nature, the spirit, the world doesn't appear like a burden. It appears like the most pleasurable, most sweetest thing that you can ever experience. Nothing. So this poor guy, whether he's eating chickpeas which are hard or soft, makes no difference. It is all Satchidanand for him. Full bliss. So we look at this classification, good, bad, harsh. For him, it's all sweet. This is what is meant by Brahman, Brahmagnan. See this young boy, a rustic, established in the highest, if you like, spiritual experience. This is just one of the 16 disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. I can tell you, all of them were God realized. They were very exciting. All were as different as you can imagine. Each one is different and individual.